I am here with Stanislav, joining us once again on the Duran. Stanislav, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for
Great to
having
have
me
you.
back.
Great to have you on once again. Before we get started, where can people follow your work?
Okay, so you can follow me on YouTube, Mr. Slavic Man. That's Slavic with a K, not a C. On Telegram, the Russian channel is Stas Tudaya Obratna, and the English language channel is Stas was there.
All right, I will have those as a pinned comment down below, and those links are also in the description box. So, Stanislav, I want to discuss what's going on between Iran and Israel, but from the Russian side of things. But before we get there, you've been on the front lines. You've seen what was going on with the POW exchanges, with the drama that was unfolding with the bodies, the 6,000 bodies that the fallen soldiers that the Russians had, and we're waiting for the Ukrainian side to pick up. That has now progressed, from what I understand, and the Ukrainian side is starting to collect those to take back those fallen soldiers. But you were there. You saw what was going on. So fill in our audience as to what went down during those days and weeks.
We were 40 kilometers from the border in outside of Bryansk, and the first attempt to return. First of all, just to understand these bodies, Ukraine lost about 60,000 troops killed in Kursk, and about 10,000 of those were mercenaries. As an example, there's been about 2,000 Polish mercenaries identified. And when I say mercenaries in the case of Poland, it's, it shit dipped to mercenaries, as they say. Because these guys are just Polish regulars. The whole battalions will quit, become mercenaries, get combat experience, and then become, again, part of the Polish army. And they've lost 8,000 killed in these 30 years, maybe more. Colombians, people like that, those are just flat out mercenaries. They're there for the money. And there were about 1,200 of those killed. And there were, by the way, about 200 Americans killed and about almost 100 English killed. Just that's been identified. Now,
This is
out of their
according to the
meeting,
Russian. This is according to Russian sources.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Now, according to, so there's about 50,000 Ukrainian dead. I mean, Ukrainian. And out of those, about 6,000 were genetically identified, either genetically identified or because they had their papers on them, passports, what have you. So they were able to identify exactly who those bodies belonged to. As the first, it takes a while. I mean, processing. A lot of these guys are not exactly in the best condition when they get found, especially with the heat right now. When we were in Bryansk, it was 32 degrees, sunny. Bodies. Kursk isn't much colder than that, just to the east. So the bodies are not in the best conditions. You can understand. And a lot of these guys are spread all over the wood lines. So it's hit or miss. A lot of them will probably never get found. I mean, there's still digs going on to pull up Soviet and Nazi remains from World War II. A lot of areas. I mean, there's tens of thousands of it from both sides. It just the body just went away into the woods, and eventually the ground absorbs them. So it's the same thing here. Plus, you got wild pigs, you've got wild dogs eating them, and you've got rats that are literally this big, and that's the body of the rat. That's minus the tail. They're getting that big because they're a lot of food for them. So these bodies were identified. The trucks went down there. So from the last negotiations, the Ukrainians, Yermolov, as a fact, Yermolov offered to exchange bodies. And Russia said, "We can give you 6,000 right at the time." So, "Oh, we'll give you 6,000 too," but they don't have 6,000. They don't have 6,000. They may have some from still left over. They can pull up a couple hundred from 22 when the big move inward was. But once the retreat started and the front stabilized, the bodies, if there were any Russian bodies, it was from failed attacks in 23, and but beginning starting at 24. Russia's been mostly on the almost everywhere on the offensive. the fronts moving forward. So any bodies left are going to be left in Russian-controlled territory, not Ukrainian-controlled territory. So any Russian bodies are automatically pulled out and repatriated. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian bodies keep piling up. And another thing that Ukrainians used to do, especially during the Great Super Counteroffensive, is, of course, they were sending in meat waves toward the end. At first, they tried to do NATO maneuvers. Of course, they lacked a lot of the firepower, the air power, the artillery power that they needed. And in the end, they broke down and were just sending in body waves. Mostly, these guys were conscripted off the street body waves. Minimal training, and off they go to one big hurrah. Well, the wounded guys would be lying in the field screaming, and the Russian side would send people out to pick them up. And the Ukrainians were actually using their own wounded as targeting points for artillery. So when the Russian guys came out there to pick up the wounded Ukrainians, they'd get shelled. So, that happens a few times, and they go, fine, whatever. Then they'll just lay there till they die and rot. Can't go get them, and the Ukrainians are using their own wounded and dead as bait, artillery bait. So a lot of those bodies got left alone in the entire front line. So when Russia gave up, was ready to give these 6,000, and they said, this is the time we're coming, go pick them up. The 4 trucks, if you look on my channel, I do have a video, and I was also on RT with the video with those 4 trucks. They're 40-foot container trucks, refrigerated. And they came out there, and the rest of the bodies, and that's 1,212 bodies. The rest of the bodies are on a train with similar containers on the train. So, we came out there. They came out there to the front. Thankfully, they didn't get shot at, which you never know with the Ukrainians. But nobody showed up to pick up the bodies. So they came back up to Bryansk, and we came out there. There was actually Russian and foreign journalists that came out. There's a group of 40 people. Honestly speaking, you're standing around, there's all these journalists and these 4 trucks, and you're going, shite, this is just the perfect friggin' HIMARS target. Just out in the open road, all these people walking around. It's like, yeah, and I didn't have my helmet on, I didn't have any body armor on, because we couldn't understand how far we were going to be from the border. So it's like, yeah, this would just be a bad situation. Thankfully, thank God, nothing came flying in. So the bodies that were, they didn't get any add-ons. And those trucks are there overnight. So we'll come in the morning. Got a brief from one of the generals from the armed forces about the bodies and the fact that Russia held up its side. It brought the bodies. Ukraine didn't show up, and the trucks, right after we left, the trucks left again. Like I said, 40 kilometers, 24 miles. Easy distance for any artillery that comes in to Bryansk and things like that. Really, you're in drone range at that point. And even with the trucks at -11 and closed, you could still get whiffs of that corruption coming through the air when the wind's blowing. And then they opened up the last truck, and just to show that there are piles of bodies in white plastic bags. So yeah, and it's a stench. Yeah, it's not the first time I'm smelling that stench in my life, and probably far from the last time. But it's not a stench you ever get used to. It coats your nose. I'm breathing through my mouth, so none knows. But it'll coat your mouth too, your tongue and everything. So it becomes a taste after a while. But that's what that is. So the trucks left after we left. The trucks left. They wouldn't let us go with the trucks. Too dangerous. Because you just never know if they're going to get hit or not. Ukraine will do that. Second time, nobody was there. And then the trucks came back. And everyone's saying, oh, it's because the Ukrainians can't afford to pay for the bodies, for the dead. Which, by the way, Ukraine did promise each of the families $350,000 plus payment as for life for children or for missing spouse. Really big sums. I mean, the U.S. Army automatic pay was $250,000 on insurance, and you could pay more into the insurance and get $500,000, and that came out of your salary. But that's U.S. Army. Of course, this is the United States that prints money. It's not Ukraine. So here, it's a huge sum of money. So of course they don't have it. The Rada passed a bill right about that time. The Rada passed a bill that said once the body is identified, 2 years after the cessation of the war will they start paying. And they said, well, it's 2 years. Let's make it 3 years. So right off the bat, so they add another year. But the thing is, it's not from the time that the body is identified as the person is dead, not just missing, but from the point that the war ends. But there is no declaration of war. So, yeah, it's one of those, yeah, okay. So when does it ever start counting? Well, about 2 days, excuse me, about 2 days after our videos, they took the bodies. But interestingly enough, to take the bodies, because they've got the list. Russia started producing the list on their internet. Everybody was killed, time, place, rank. Everybody had been identified. So the families are going nuts, obviously. There were several units that refused to go into combat. They said, fine, it's one thing I die, it's nothing. You're not even going to return my body to my family. This is beyond the pale of all pales. This is past satanic at this point. And so there was a lot of pressure. So Ukraine took the bodies, but they took them under a specific condition. Each of those families had to sign off that they had no claims on money and the government wouldn't even help them bury the bodies. I mean, this is below low. This is, if you haven't understood that you are just meat for the grinder, I mean, that just tells you are just meat for the grinder. You're such meat that we don't even want you back. Just go rot. You're past your usefulness. You've died for our cause, which probably wasn't your cause, and just go die, go rot off and disappear. I mean, this is the level of the Zelensky regime is at. That, I mean, they're just spitting into the grave of everybody they've sent off to die, whether those people wanted to fight or not. I don't. It's hard to even pinpoint in history where you've dealt with a regime like that before. They didn't want the bodies, and they didn't want the bodies because they couldn't pay. Obviously, they weren't going to pay anyways. They didn't want the bodies because they were afraid of the wave of anger that was going to grow up. It's one thing when the people are missing, and according to the Red Cross, there's 400,000 missing Ukrainian presumed dead. So 600,000 or so that they officially say are dead, and another 400,000 are just missing. Well, officially, in quotes, because they're officially, Zelensky saying, he's lost like 20,000 people or something like that, or some ludicrous number. The cokehead, I don't know if he's just lying or the cokehead really doesn't have a clue about what's going on. Could be both. I've heard from people in the Ukrainian government that either came over to the Russian side or were captured. They were saying that, ranking people that Zelensky has no clue about what's really going on. He can't handle it. So they don't really tell him anything. Keep him like a mushroom. Keep him in the dark. Feed him shite. So that's the situation there. They did take the bodies back, but again, at each family had to sign a document that they waived all rights for payment, support, or even burial.
Incredible. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about what's going on between Iran and Israel, but approach it from the Russian side of things. Iran is part of BRICS. Iran is very important to China, critical for China, their relationship. But Iran also has a very good relationship with Russia, and for Russia, this is an important region of the world, and Iran is an important country for Russia. So what's going on?
Well, Trump reminds me of some kind of protagonist in a cartoon that every episode he just gets himself into some kind of ridiculous trouble. Maybe like Simpsons, something along that line. I mean, what ludicrous things can we create to really get ourselves into trouble today? Trump's got the problem of MAGA. Because the people that elected him don't want the U.S. in wars. They want him out of everything. Go secure the borders, bring the troops back, end this insanity. And what do we get? We get the exact opposite. I mean, just spit in the eye of the people that elected you. Make sure Vance gets a hammer blow upside the head when it's his turn to run because Israel owns you, or some other idiotic concept like Kellogg and his. Kellogg was singing the praises for Zelensky the other day. God Almighty, it was puke-worthy. considering his daughter's making money off of, his daughter makes money off of the Ukraine war by evacuating wounded and dead American mercenaries. Because those HIMARS and those Patriots are crewed by Americans. And I'm pretty damn sure they're not mercs in the whole concept of mercs. They're contract. They may be contractors. Maybe people that signed their resignation papers and became contractors, and they're going to re-sign their contract with the U.S. Army afterwards. Because it takes a long time to prepare those people, especially mechanics and commanders of anti-air systems like the Patriot. We're talking a year to prepare a person. So we've got. Okay, so Iran, there's two problems. Russia had reasonably good relationship with Israel, and there's a lot of people with dual citizenship, just like with the U.S. in Israel. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, Russia also had very good relationship with everybody around Israel. And while Israel had massive amount of sympathy after 7th of October, massive amount of sympathy. They've managed to burn it all out and burn out sympathy for the next 50, 60 years for what they've been doing. And it's all over Russian television, on and off. The jihad, I won't call it jihad, I don't know, it's not a crusade. I don't know what to call it. The drive for the greater Israel, where they're just you're committing genocide. The first real genocide of the 21st century. I mean, on camera, right before everybody's eyes. So the sympathy isn't with Israel, with the vast, vast majority of the Russian population for obvious reasons. Plus, they're hitting Orthodox. There's about 10% of Palestinians are Catholics or Orthodox. The Lebanese a third of the Lebanese are Christian, mostly Orthodox plus Catholics, and so on. And that hits home too. As a matter of fact, before the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russian Orthodox Church was the main Patreon church of the people living in Palestine, today's Israel and the Palestinian states in that area. The Russian Church put up schools, orphanages, and things like that. It was one of the biggest landowners too, because it used that land to help the people who were relatively poor, even considering that those areas were part of the Ottoman Empire at that point. Russia got that right to defend the Christians out of the Ottoman Empire. So the ties go back pretty deep and pretty far. And then we get to Iran. So first of all, yes, Iran is part of BRICS. It's the first wave that came in after the initial BRICS formation. Because the I is for India, not for Iran. For those people that don't know. But Iran is a special case. First of all, yesterday, Iran confirmed the agreement with Russia. The Iranian parliament, it's waiting signature from the president, and that means it's a joint defense agreement. So that takes it a whole new level. It's the same thing Russia has with North Korea. Now, Russia, under no circumstances, would defend Iran if Iran started the conflict, and that's in that agreement. But defend Iran when it's defending itself, absolutely. Additionally, for those people who don't know, I mean, Iran, go look at some videos of walks to Tehran. They're not these all women covered from head to toe. It doesn't look like Saudi Arabia. The religious sectors, it does. The less religious, the more liberal areas, the women will have scarves on their heads or maybe around their shoulders. They're dressed conservatively, but they're not in burqas like most of the Westerners seem to think they are. Women are able to drive. They're able to have careers. They're scientists. They're teachers. They're doctors. It's a whole different. And as a matter of fact, just to understand on the level that Iran works, Iran is a republic. Let's begin with that. Iran has a sizable enough Jewish minority that has never left Iran, and they pledge their loyalty to Iran. And they have a member of parliament that's Jewish. They have a member of parliament that's an Orthodox Christian. And they have a member of parliament, interestingly enough, that's Zoroastrian, the original religion of Persia. These that are basically for Islam just idol worshippers, Zoroastrians. And they do also have representation in the parliament. Obviously, they're not a big minority, so all of them have like one person in Parliament. But the fact is, they do have representation in Parliament. So this isn't some super totalitarian state that the U.S. and the Western media constantly keep selling it as. It's far from it. They're really very well educated, very cultured. I mean, for God's sakes, they had a flourishing culture, one of the biggest cultures and the most flourishing cultures in the world back when most Europeans were sharpening sticks in a fire. That's the reality of it. My ancestors included, for that matter. So you can't look at these people as some kind of barbarians, though the Western media constantly portrays them as that. So Iran to Russia, it's not just an ally. And here's the really, really important point. Not only is it not just an ally to Russia, it is an existential crisis for Russia, just a little lower than Ukraine. And why? Because of location of Iran. Iran is closing the gates for the U.S. Direct intervention into the Caucasus, starting with, well, Armenia's already been flipped, basically. But starting with the Caucasus, where the Georgian dream would fall if Iran isn't going to be there, because Iran does support them too, and keeps a lot of Western elements from being able to penetrate from the south, and into Central Asia, because you have Iran and Afghanistan. And for U.S. Regime change and lots of equipment moving in, it's pretty difficult to get in there. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And then further on, you wind up with China too on there, so it makes a nice little wall for Central Asia. It isolates it more from Western influence. Though there's still plenty of that. If Iran falls, the West is going to go for the Russian underbelly, 110%. They're going to start slapping in mercenaries under Islamic Jihad, international, under ISIS, whatever they want to call them this time around, or for this week. And they'll start slapping them in there really, really quickly. They'll start overthrowing the governments in the areas and creating a lot of problems. So for Russia, the Russian underbelly is very exposed if Iran falls, on top of all the other things.
Trump decides to go to war with Iran in order to support Israel. Will Russia and China do something? And what can they do to support Iran? Will they do something? Because there is a belief in DC and in Israel, I believe, which is that Russia and China will not do anything and cannot do anything. So will they do something? And what can they do? Can they provide weapons? Can they provide intel? Can they do something more? Will Iran ask? Will they do something? I mean, they probably will not do anything unless Iran asks for help, I imagine. And right now, Iran hasn't asked for anything, and I don't know if Iran asks or if it needs. Does Iran need Russia and China? Would it need Russia and China to help?
Well, in my opinion, at the moment, Iran needs Russia to supply fuel because Iran is an importer of gasoline, of petrol. It's had several of its refineries hit, so it's going to need fuel. It needs electricity. Iran has already been having problems short of electricity, which is why it was building nuclear power plants, and Russia is in the process of building nuclear power plants in Iran, in the peaceful atom, which the U.S. wanted to deny. Iran can't do that. So, and Russia has the Caspian Sea to deliver all of this very quickly to Iran. Missiles, possibly. But Iran has enough missiles, ballistic missiles, short, medium, long-range ballistic missiles, to do an incredible amount of damage. Iran has several cards it has not yet played. One of them is to close the Straits of Hormuz. And to understand, the Straits of Hormuz are very shallow, relatively narrow waters that go right by Iran. And by shallow, there are, I think, 11, maybe 12 canals that have been dug up so that these big oil tankers can go back and forth, up and down. To close that, you don't need to wait for a tanker. You take a Corvette, or you take a larger, but still relatively small ship, and you scuttle it in each one of those lanes. And that's it. No tankers moving up and down that lane. It's blocked. And if they continue they try to remove it, Iran, there's a mountain range right on the coastline full of natural and man-made caves that are full of land-to-sea missile batteries. Very easily, you can take out whatever's trying to unblock those canals. And just so to understand, there's about 33% of the world's oil daily traveling out of the Persian Gulf through those canals. The U.S., just so we understand, when Americans say, "Oh, we're the biggest pumpers in the world," well, yes, but shale oil has actually been going down for the last 2.5 years. A. B. U.S. imports 8 million barrels of oil per day. Even if there's still flow of oil to the U.S., say from Canada or what have you, the cost of that oil is going to go up well over $100, $150. I mean, you're talking a third of the market supply is gone on a fungible good that everybody's now starting a bidding war for. And that's going to hit any Trump's redeeming qualities and trying to fix the U.S. economy are going to go right out the window. We're not talking $5, $6, $7 a gallon. We're talking $12, $15, $20 a gallon, depending how far this goes. And if Russia's oil goes off the market, another 10%, then it's just basically economic collapse over a very large chunk of the world. And that's a fact. Additionally, within short to medium range ballistic missiles, and by ballistic also I'm talking about cruise missiles, hypersonic, etc. So within 500-600 kilometers of Iran are located over 60,000 American troops on all these nice, neat little bases with aviation assets, with naval assets, and so on. I mean, you're talking about large quantities of future casualties that Trump is going to get hit with. And that people, a lot of MAGA, if you go read or you talk to people, they're angry. They don't want to fight for Israel. And they see Israel started the fight. And a lot of people sort of remember that, Netanyahu spent 30 years telling the world and America what just now, in a month, in 2 weeks, in 5 days, Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon. I mean, 30 years has been crying wolf, right? There's quite a few people understand this, and it's one thing to support Israel. It's another thing to send your son to die for Israel. Which, by the way, Israel has not a single signed alliance document with the U.S. Not a single signed document. Never signed any documents. But the U.S. does everything, and you know why. I mean, it's obvious enough. So that weighs on those voters too. And if their economic well-being is going down the drain because oil's just doubled in price, it jumped $15 just at the start of the firing by Israel. Overnight, $15. Basically 25% jump in price off the 60 something that was at. So. Yeah, that's a pretty big hit. It doesn't matter if the U.S. can still get enough oil in. That oil is going to be much, much more expensive. So that's going to be a big hit right there. Plus, the Americans are within easy range. Plus, no aircraft carrier is going to go into the Persian Gulf. It's a future reef the moment it goes into the Persian Gulf. So they're going to stay out in the Red Sea. You've got the Houthis that are also firing. It becomes a very difficult situation. You don't need to sink an aircraft carrier to knock it out of business. You just have to damage the flight deck. That's it. You got one good drone explosion on the flight deck or anything larger, the aircraft carrier is useless. And what's it going to do? It goes off to some port to get fixed. So there's still a limit of what the U.S. can also do as far as force projection. U.S. is never going to invade Iran. Iran is a country of almost 100 million people, mountainous and forested. This isn't Iraq, a flat open desert. It's going to allow the U.S. to build up for 6 months before it does something. This is an active war theater. The U.S. troops in the middle of all this, they're also mostly locating in areas where there's lots of Iran-allied Shiite militia running around. So they're going to be busy trying to keep themselves alive from these Shiite militia attacks. So it's a bad situation. The U.S. is actually in a relatively bad and weak situation. And a loss to Iran is just going to, whatever's left of the American fables, just like the IDF. Until it went into Gaza, it had this big pumped up image. Then when it went into Gaza, that image went away really, really quickly. It's going to get deflated. The U.S. Army is going to get really fast or the U.S. military is going to deflate really fast because Iran is a large, very large country. The best chance they have against Iran is fomenting internal disorder through the minorities and trying to drag Iran into multi-front insurgency.
How is this going to play out if, you understanding the military tactics of the United States? What do you think they're going to try to do if these assets are going into the Middle East
Well,
to support Israel?
U.S. has since World War II been very high. I mean, like high on the concept of the Air Force, or back then it was the Army Air Corps, can change the war by just bombing civilians. And to that degree, the U.S. Air Force and the Royal Air Force, well, the U.S. Army Air Corps and the Royal Air Force burned alive 5 million Germans out of the 6 million German civilians that died in World War II, and there was no regime change. But they've tried it every single time. Hanoi, I'm sorry, not Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi got more tonnage of bombs on it than Berlin did. Was the North Vietnamese regime or government removed? Of course not. And it's been that way every single time. They blew up how many hospitals, trains, and markets in Yugoslavia, in Serbia? It doesn't work because I'll tell you this, even the liberal elements turn toward the government because they see who's killing their people. There was a demonstration, a video came out, a demonstration from Tehran, from Liberal Party members. Yes, they have multi-parties. Liberal Party members, women that are sure as hell not going to cover their heads, screaming, why the hell do we not have the bomb to stop them? Bomb being the nuclear bomb. I mean, what it does is it energizes society to get around the flag, right? It condenses society into one more or less homogeneous mass, at least while the conflict is going. So it doesn't undermine the power of the government. It actually enhances it amongst the people. Yeah, it can do a lot of damage, infrastructure damage. But the people rally around the flag. That's the natural tendency of any society that's being bombed from without by some foreigner, especially some foreigner that's radically different from them, that keeps talking about, we want to destroy your country. Well, okay. And you can see that even in Russia with lots of our liberals ran away. But, I know plenty of people that were conservative that didn't like Vladimir Putin for one reason or another that were now praying for him and his health. Because they quite well understood what we're in the middle of. The country's fighting for its survival, for not just its right to be this or that, but for very survival. So it energizes the people to defend their country. Iran has a gigantic stockpile of missiles. If anything, Russia will send more missiles, and China can send missiles. Russia will send fuel. Russia will send radar systems. And that's another thing that's actually come out. Iran set up a lot of dummy equipment. From the last attack they had by Israel, they had enough time to figure out, okay, these guys more or less know where our equipment is. So a lot of the equipment that was hit was actually dummies. They brought in copies, empty facades, and put them in the exact same locations that the other equipment was in, and moved that equipment to other locations, and kept setting up these dummy locations. There was quite a bit of what was destroyed was actually, there's lots of videos and photos coming out. It's just empty shells, right, with a facade, with a veneer on it. So what the actual strength of Iran is, it's still hard to say. But what the question then becomes, sooner or later, one of these B-52s is going to get shot down, or B-2s are going to get shot down. And U.S. pilots are going to be lost. And then how does that resonate? And God forbid the U.S. loses an aircraft carrier, 5,000 sailors on it. What's the U.S. going to do? Tuck tail and leave, or try to escalate to a nuclear conflict? And if it escalates to a nuclear conflict, it quite literally may have a nuclear conflict, just with Russia on top of that. Because Russia is duty bound, and if Vladimir Vladimirovich, because the U.S. likes to look at people as these overarching dictators that can do whatever they want. It's like a video game, and you're in charge of a nation in the video game. I can do whatever I really want in this game. Well, real society doesn't work that way. And Vladimir Vladimirovich he's got parameters in which he can function, and he's got different parties or parties of people that are influencing him. And now Russia is duty bound by agreement to defend Iran. And there's no limit on how far to defend Iran. So, I mean, Iran can ask for nothing. Iran can ask for everything. If Iran is in a defensive position, if Russia doesn't come through, there's going to be a lot of problems in the government and in society in Russia. From patriots, from the right, for the right actors. And the president has to understand that. I mean, he does understand it. He has to take that into account. So what his actions are going to be, he can't turn his back on Iran. That's going to be asking for a whole lot of problems inside of Russia itself. And the unfortunate part about an escalation cycle is every time you make a decision, unless you're a very, very strong leader, and Trump isn't, every time you make a decision, your choice of further decisions just keeps getting narrower and narrower and narrower till you only have one decision, that's war. And it takes a very strong man to walk away from that. And Trump is definitely not that man. I don't believe that for a second. Especially with the people around him who are just, slobbering at the mouth, rabid war pigs. Particularly those that never served themselves, but even those that have served. Very few exceptions, Tulsi Gabbard being one of them. Well, by the way, I don't know if you saw it or not, Tulsi Gabbard put out a video of "We don't want nuclear war. This is what nuclear war could be." Really shocking video. I mean, all things considered.
It looks like she's been sidelined.
Yeah, she has.
Like the group of people around Trump for some reason, Trump himself, but you would have to imagine as chief of staff. I mean, that's who I would imagine is setting up whatever meetings. It looks like they're deliberately uninviting Tulsi Gabbard to these meetings. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's probably, you're absolutely right. I'm afraid that's what's happening. And I'm not surprised it did happen. It's an unfortunate fact, but she was one of the few voices that actually had any kind of, calming effect on this situation. But like I said, there was a meme. Bolton went to the hospital with a heart attack. He had a heart on for 3 hours. We found out that we're going to have a war with Iran. But you laugh at it. But the unfortunate part is there's probably a lot of people that they've got permanent smiles on their faces right now. We're going to have a war. We're finally going to get our Iran war. It's not going to be good for the U.S. or anybody else, but
it never ends well. The neocon plans never end well.
No, it doesn't.
They always get what they want. It never ends well, but they always get their way.
And they never learn.
They never learn.
Very
true. All right. On that note, we will end the video there. Stanislav, where can people find you?
Again, YouTube at Mr. Slavic Man, and that's Slavic with a K, not a C. Telegram, Stas Today Obratno is the Russian, and the English one is Stas Was There.
All right. I will have those links in the description box down below and as a pinned comment. Take care.